Okay, at this time, we'll invite Dennis Hisey up for the El Paso welcome.
Thanks, Sean. Good morning. Glad you're all here. We are more than happy to host the CCI conference here in El Paso County. By now, you've picked up your registration materials, and you've had a chance to look through it. You know we're going to deal with all the stuff the challenges that we deal with all the time. Child welfare, veterans services, highway maintenance, state mandates, some open record stuff, criminal justice, county jails, economic conditions, economic development, and a little tax policy thrown in there too. We rarely talk about the arts here. In fact, we maybe don't even think about the arts here. And that may not have been what you think about when you think of El Paso County, but we have a lot of artwork in our county buildings, and we think it's kind of cool. A little known fact, even to the locals, the arts community is very important to us here in El Paso County. It's worth about $72 million a year, and in the Denver metro area, it's up to about $1.8 billion annually. Here in El Paso County, the commissioners have for many years encouraged school-age artists to display their works on our boardroom walls. And every year we adopt a ceremonial proclamation recognizing October as National Arts Month. This year, we did a little more, and we now have both permanent and rotating artwork on display in El Paso County office buildings. And I have to tell you, it's been fun to watch the citizens come in the doors on a dead run. They have their car tags or their ballots in hand, and their plan is to get in and out of a drab county building in just as quickly as they can. But then they stop to look at historic paintings of old fairy tales, a modern painting by an artist who was inspired to pursue her artistic talents while working at CCI, and two groups of photos with very different messages. We have a quick pop quiz. So, who's this? Barbara, that was good. No, that is not Sally. That's Little Red Riding Hood. Okay. How about this one? That's Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Have an easy one coming up here. And it's kind of a strange shot because that thing's 29 feet long. That is Cinderella. Good for somebody out there. And who could recite this nursery rhyme? Sat in a corner. All right, very good. And just for extra points, anybody recognize Winkin', Blinkin', and Nod? So the art experts tell us that these are important works of art from a well-known Great Depression era artist named Leon Bradbury. There were 9 paintings commissioned by the Federal Works Projects Administration, the WPA, and were originally displayed at Ellsworth Elementary School in Denver. After the initial excitement of accepting the artwork had worn off, we realized we could not just strap a 29-foot, 80-year-old painting to the county lowboy and drive it down the interstate. So the county staff worked with Colorado Council of Arts, local arts community, and even the U.S. Government General Services Administration to acquire the historic paintings from the GSA inventory. They now hang in El Paso County's Centennial Hall. Blazing Saddles is coming up next here. This adds a splash of color to the El Paso County building. A Colorado native, Carrie Fell, was an administrative assistant for former county administrator and CCI director Terry Harris. Harris encouraged the artist to pursue her passion, and on the plaque beside the painting, she credits him with her inspiration and success in art. It wouldn't pass muster today with our HR directors, but the way the story goes, Terry told her that if she didn't quit and pursue her art full time, he was going to fire her. So, by the way, I prefer to think of that painting as 4 riders of the range as opposed to the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. CityWorks is a temporary black and white photo collection that documents local public works and prominent building construction from the 1930s through the 60s. The prints are for sale, with the proceeds going to the Old Colorado Historical Center. And next week, up at the Citizen Service Center, we'll dedicate another photo exhibit telling the personal stories of the victims of the Waldo Canyon fire. It's called The Faces of the Fire. The collection is by nationally recognized photographer Wendy Pierce Nelson, and it will be on permanent display. The catalyst in bringing the historic WPA paintings to El Paso County was Colorado Creative Industries, which is a small but impressive division of the Colorado Office of Economic Development and International Trade.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to invite Sally Clark up. She's got a short presentation here for us.
So let me fall off the stage. Thank you very much. Well, I'm the only thing I think standing between you and the governor. I don't know how that comes out, Governor, but we're pleased to have you here. And 60 counties out of 64, that's great. We need to give ourselves a round of applause for all being here today. Well, I am just so excited to be here today and to thank you all for your support, to be able to serve you at the national level, now as first Vice President of NACO, or President-elect, and taking office in July of next year, President of NACO. We really have put Colorado on the map. All of you and the tremendous support I had not only from El Paso County, but from counties across the state, including our great CCI staff and Chip Taylor. We were relentless in making this happen. And I want to just talk briefly about, and Chip said I only have 2 minutes, so I'm going to try and be really quick. But I wanted to just talk about how important it is for you to participate in NACO. The things that NACO really does, and when you think about National Association of Counties, it's really an extension of Colorado counties. Colorado counties helps us at the state level, but there's also a connection to Congress. And as our governor, I'm sure, knows very well, and all of us know, the dollars flow downhill. Unfortunately, they don't make it all the time to the local level. But there are some very important legislative issues that are going on in Washington, D.C. that are going to affect both our state and our local governments. The transportation, the surface transportation bill, basically MAP 21 and the Highway Users Trust Fund will expire in May of next year. And what that means is the money will stop, and there's no long-term funding plan. I'm hearing now that they're going to do another continuing resolution. But we have got to put pressure on Congress to fund this long-term, because our state and our local governments cannot plan if we don't know what money is going to come down the pike. Waters at the U.S. and Lynn Padgett, where are you? Lynn is here somewhere. She's right there. She's going to be bringing a resolution forward to support NACO's perspective on the regulations that are coming through from the EPA, and basically to oppose those regulations unless they're reasonable, because we cannot put things into place without additional cost, with the EPA not really thinking about what will become a U.S. waterway. A curb and gutter, really? You know, what are we really talking about here? And that's been one of NACO's major priorities. Municipal bonds, the importance of having those tax incentives to governments and agencies that are able to buy into those. The cost is astronomical if we're not able to tax exempt those bonds in the future. So that's another big picture item. But here's just a couple of things that NACO's fought for on a national level for us. First of all, PILT. Very important to Colorado. $34.5 million in 2014 came through for payment in lieu of taxes. SCAP funding that comes through for public safety, $1.4 million. We've saved $452,000 through the U.S. Communities Buying Program through NACO. Colorado, the Community Development Block Grant funds, Colorado received $13.2 million in CDBG funding in 2014 and $5.1 million in home funds. Those are just some of the things that NACO works on. And those of you that are on steering committees, could you just please stand up and be recognized? Those of you that participate in National Association of County Steering Committees, please stand so we can give you a round of applause and thanks. So I'm going to just close and let you get to the governor. I don't know quite what that means, Governor, but Governor Hickenlooper, we're happy to have you here today as well. I'm heading out, and I appreciate being able to go first because I've got to catch a plane. That's probably where Keith is off to get to our NACO board meeting. But I just wanted to really say, you know, Jack Hilbert was well known for saying, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. We do not want to be on the menu. We've got to be at the table. NACO will help us get there. My initiative this year, coming into next year as we start in, will be safe and secure counties. So help me make that happen. Those of you who have not been involved, think about going to a conference, going to a meeting. All of the things that affect us at the local level are impacted by what happens at the national level. So I am so thankful to be able to serve you at NACO, and let's go get them because we can make an impact. We're a small state, but our participation is really very much appreciated at the national level. And Colorado and our Colorado counties folks, including Jenny Pingenot, who keeps us on track when we're in DC. Another lady in red, and we're not Little Red Riding Hood, I guess. We really depend on all of you to make it happen. So keep your memberships current. If we are 100% state, we get another board seat at NACO too. And we're still missing I think 3 or 4 counties right now. So think about if you're not members of NACO, renew. Governor, maybe you can help us work on the city and county of Denver. Do you know a couple people there? So thank you very much and have a great conference, and let's be at the table, not on the menu. Thanks.
All right, well, without further delay, we'll go ahead and introduce I'd say still the man of the hour, Mr. John Hickenlooper.
This is so rickety up here, it almost could be perceived as a way to get rid of the newly elected governor. Sean, thanks for the introduction. And I don't know whether you guys, I'm not sure I heard it clearly, when Dennis Hisey was describing, and I thought I heard a Republican El Paso County Commissioner talking and praising the WPA. I just thought, I don't know if it obviously didn't hit your ears quite the same way it did mine. And I want to also give congratulations to Sally Clark for becoming the incoming head of NACO. Did she walk out? She had to go fly, right? Yeah. It is, you know, last year I was the vice chair, this year I'm the chair of the National Governors Association. And it does take a certain amount of time out of your month, not a lot. But to get involved in leadership in these kinds of organizations, I think, is very important. And it does allow you to, hear what the real cutting edge is in other states and other counties, but it also allows you to get a certain amount of leverage with various levels of federal government by having those networks. I love the fact that CCI, it's with what, everybody but 60 out of 62 members were here? Is that what it was? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's incredible. And to have this many county commissioners in one place, probably one of the most powerful rooms in Colorado in terms of the way politics really works, is having all you commissioners. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that about half the citizens wouldn't like to see this room blown up. It's equally me as well as you, let's be fair. And I do appreciate what a challenge it is for Chip to be able to try and keep everybody pulling on the same oar and in the same rhythm. Appreciate that it's a difficult job that you all do and a crucially important job. I see Reggie Bika is here, our head of human services. Talk about a courageous individual to wade down here to be surrounded with all these commissioners with all the discussions that have been going on around child welfare. Post-election, want to thank all of you folks that were for me. The wave side, there you go. The folks that did wave signs and contributed time and in some cases money, that gave us a smile during the campaign. But I also want to recognize and thank all of you that supported Congressman Beaupre, who loves the state just as much as I do. And I know that your passion was just as strong as our passion. And I think ultimately that passion is that commitment to Colorado is what unites us. And this is the opportunity after an election to say, all right, we all put everything we had into it. We worked as hard as we could. We recognize that that's past, and that good ideas can come from anywhere, that no one person or no one perspective is the answer, has the answer to all the problems. And I think when we heard from various candidates talking about the Colorado way, that way is bringing everybody back together after elections, collaborating on how do we create the appropriate compromises and the way to move the state forward. These campaigns take a lot out of people, not just the candidates, but out of our citizens. And I think that's something we all need to be aware of, and especially in the next 6 months or the next 12 months, focus on, getting back to a more reasonable form of discourse, and focusing on how do we get, the facts on the table. One thing that I think Colorado has always been defined by is the ability to be fact-based in our decision-making, but also to be objective and inclusive, so that we get as many people around the table, as many points of view as possible, and that we also are able to find a fair way of assessing the facts and getting to an appropriate conclusion. Certainly compared to what many of the counties have been through over the last 4 years, if you look at the 13 federal declarations of disaster, and we had the 2 worst droughts since the Great Depression. We had, because of that, the 2 worst fire seasons in the history of the state. And then a year ago, September, we had the most destructive flood in the history of the state. So campaign seemed a little bit like a walk in the park from that. And yet we saw all those words like fortitude and resilience and grit. So many of you here I got a chance to spend time with, unfortunately looking at very severe damages that were inflicted by Mother Nature on our communities. And yet we never lost focus. We kept our eye not just on helping our neighbors rebuild and do so in a way that we'd be stronger than we were before, but also in trying to move our economy forward and making sure that we could reach our full potential. Our unemployment now is down to 4.3%. I think we've got almost every county that is down below 6%. That's still not good enough. And I'm very aware of that. I wake up literally every morning and I go to bed every night trying to think of, how do we help, especially those places that are lagging, how do we help them do better? And how do we do a better job on some of the groups of people that we can identify that are still having a hard time getting back to work. And I think that long-term unemployed, we dropped that number in half, and I'm defining it long-term unemployed. There are a bunch of different directions, but we're using the 26 weeks. And in 26 weeks, someone's been out of work long enough that it really has interrupted their career. I know about this firsthand. When I was a geologist back in the 80s and the price of oil collapsed, our company got sold in 1986. I got laid off, and I was out of work. I was out of work for about 40 weeks before we finally couldn't realize I wasn't going to find a geology job, and we started working on starting a brew pub, and then ended up another. It was over 2 years before I first got a paycheck out of that brew pub. There are a lot of folks. There were almost 100,000 people in Colorado 4 years ago that were out of work over 26 weeks. We cut that in half, so we're down to now closer to 45,000, but that's still an enormous number. And I can tell you for a fact, if you've been out of work that long, once you get past about 5 months, 6 months, you begin to see a different person in the mirror. A lot of the things you took for granted and the confidence you had isn't there. And I think that's part of the challenge that each county faces and that our entire state faces, is that when you have that many people out of work that long, it creates disenchantment and mistrust of the system. And that's not good for anybody. A lot of this is, and we go through these cycles in this country of rapid increases in productivity. So you look at what GPS has done in our smartphones and technology. I mean, look at robotics. We have eliminated whole professions and whole fields of work over the last 10 years. And we've got to work a lot harder at figuring out how do we train people for the jobs that are coming in back in their place, and how do we make sure Colorado is getting more than our fair share of challenging jobs that are going to obviously require more education, but at the same time have a higher salary, better compensation programs. We're looking at we have a thing called the Colorado Hire Program. We're able to use federal monies. We did a pilot in the first couple years of the administration where we helped subsidize job training and job experience. We're now in the process of expanding this, both in public-private sector. One good example, there are a number of different programs in this, but the Lockheed Martin, we take veterans coming back when they're just getting out of active duty, and while they're still employed by the military, using their time as they're decommissioning to make sure they get trained in whether it's welding or whether it's in the basic techniques used for aerospace, that they're getting training that's going to lead directly to a job. We also are pretty far down the road in creating I think we'll get this out probably in the next month or two, a program where we reach out to the businesses across the state and try to say and figure out the way that we can support them, so that when we say to them, if you're going to hire 10 people, we want one of those people to be long-term unemployed, and that we will provide specific training through our either community colleges or our workforce training sites, but specific training to deliver a skill set that employer needs. And it's, again, one of those things that if we focus on it, I think we can get real results. And Lord knows there are lots of jobs out there. The challenge is getting the interface, the connection between making sure that the people looking for jobs have the skills that the employers are looking for. We had a job fair this past fall in Adams County. We had 30 employers there showing up for workers. They had flat out that day they wanted to hire 100 people. We had 16 people showed up. So there are jobs out there. I think that oftentimes the skill sets that are being required for those jobs, we don't have enough people that have the skill sets, and I think that's a role that counties can play. I think we also have to look at the differently abled. We spent a lot of time in the last 3 or 4 years trying to provide more support for people that have various levels of autism or other disabilities. There's no question, and there are a number of companies that have had great success with it, that there are any number of jobs that can be designed to allow someone who's differently able to have a successful job and in many cases a career. And I think that's another place is we have trouble connecting people to jobs where we can expand. You know, when we came in 4 years ago, we did what we call the bottom-up economic development plan. We reached out, went around to all the states and asked each county to create a kind of an economic blueprint. And in the end, we took those and put them into 12 regional plans, and then ultimately had what we call the Colorado blueprint, statewide plan. We're going to update that. I'm not sure we're going to go out and try and make you guys do everything or ask you guys, make you guys. I know that's not how the world works. Ask you all to start from scratch, but I think we are going to ask that everybody go back, look at where you are with what your county came up with, what's changed in the last 4 years, what different ideas you have, and begin looking at specific implementations that can allow us to get better training, better education. You know, it's ironic that as we're now coming out of this recession, it still remains a difficult economy for young people to get their first job. If you've got a job, almost any job, you're seeing more and more, literally every week, more opportunities. I think we're going to begin seeing some wage increases here pretty dramatically. But that first job is still, this is probably in the last 30 years, is as hard a time to get a first job as it's been. And I think we all have an obligation to try and find ways. Obviously, internships are a simple way that people can come work in county government. We're now up to about 75 interns in the governor's office between the various cabinet, various state agencies and the governor's office. And you know, there are strict rules. You can't bring an intern and turn them into a worker that doesn't get paid. But an internship is a great step for a kid being able to get that first job. Anyway, as we take those blueprints and figure out how do we kind of get the right training and make sure that we have young people prepared, I think that's going to act as a catalyst to help us get more high-paying jobs coming through the system. We also want to make sure that we keep the lines of communication open with all of you. This meeting is always a good opportunity to sit down there and say, all right, let's have a bunch of questions. Hopefully we can get past the negativity of the campaign and all the attack ads. The story I told, and I'll finish with this, and we'll take questions. You know, I used to tell the story about attack ads. You know, and I've said this before to this group. Attack ads work, right? If Coke did an attack ad against Pepsi, Pepsi's sales would go down. Pepsi would have no choice but to do a counterattack against Coke. Coke would attack Pepsi. Pepsi would attack Coke. You'd depress the product category of soft drinks. Everything would go down. Well, what we're doing is we're depressing the product category of democracy. And people turn off the TV, turn off the news, stop reading the newspaper, stop getting into the details of policy issues, and we accept that at our own fate. And the story I used to tell was of what the attack ads are trying to do to us. It was a story of 3 sharks swimming across the Pacific. Mommy, daddy, baby shark. The sailboat had tipped over, it sunk. There were half dozen people with GPS waiting to be rescued. And the daddy shark said, this is a learning experience. We're going to go swim around them with just the tip of our fin out of the water. And the baby shark said, oh, I can do that. And they swim around, and the humans were going, is that a shark? Is that a shark? Come back, that baby shark says, that was great, what do we do now? And the mommy shark says, now we're going to swim around them with our fins completely out of the water. The baby shark says, I can do that. And they swim around. Now the humans are screaming and yelling, going, help! Help! Sharks! They come back, and the baby shark says, now it was really great. Now what do we do? The daddy shark says, now we're going to go gobble them up. And they do. They eat them all up. The baby shark's swimming on his back, and he's smiling. He says, oh, mommy, daddy, that was the greatest meal of my whole life. But how come we had to swim around them twice? Once with our fin a little bit, and then once with our fin completely out of the water. And the daddy shark looks at his son and goes, son, human beings are the most scrumptious delicacy in the 7 seas. But they're even better if you get all the poop out of them. So, come on, you guys all had breakfast. So on that note, that's what those attack ads are trying to do to you, just in case you hadn't noticed. Thank you again for all that you've been here, all that you've done to get here. Thank you for all the work that we're going to do together. I appreciate it. I see 2 microphones up there. If anybody's got questions, this was intentionally kept down to 15-minute remarks so that you could have at me, I think was what Sally said. Yeah.
Thank you, Governor. Steve Johnson. I'm County Commissioner from Larimer County. I wish you'd speak a little bit about urban renewal authorities and tax increment financing. Most of us in the room are interested in that. We want you to know that we support urban renewal, we support economic development, we support downtown development authorities. But what we really need is your help on the revenue piece. We had House Bill 1375 in the legislature last year, passed with broad bipartisan support. The leadership of both parties supported that bill. We understand that you had some concerns with some of the technical details of that bill. We want you to know that we're willing to work with you on those details, but we really need help with the revenue piece, and let me tell you why. CML is running a bill which they're calling a compromise bill in the next legislative session. Is largely window dressing, ignores the revenue piece completely. I'll give you one example. There was the Foothills Fashion Mall project in Fort Collins, a $53 billion tax increment project, for which you supplied most of that revenue through the state backfill of education. But Larimer County is losing $12 million in property tax revenue over the next 25 years. At the same time, we get $12 million of additional costs of serving that project. We met with CML about their bill and explained why the revenue was so important to us, and said, we just want you to put some of your sales tax increment in that bill, as you said in your veto letter, broadening the tax base. And they said, we can't do that because we need that money to serve the demands of that development. Well, so do the counties. So what I'm asking you is if you'll work with us to address the technical concerns you have with the bill, if you will use your leadership to make sure that the revenue is a part of anything that comes out of the legislative session so that we can all fairly participate in economic development and have accountability to our taxpayers for our property tax levies, in many cases which may be dedicated to specific functions that are being diverted by tax increment financing.
Got it. I'm happy to sit down. I mean, what I said last year, and I still believe, I think there's a pony in there somewhere, and I think the revenue has to be a part of it. So my assumption, my belief is that we will find a compromise in there that allows to make sure the counties aren't stripped of all their revenue, their resources, when they have increasing obligations. I get it. Yeah.
Mike Brazell, Park County. First off, I want to commend you on your support for the broadband funding legislation that got passed last year. And you talked about job creation and all that, and broadband deployment is one of the key things, I think, in the future that's going to address this problem. Location-neutral businesses and location-neutral employers are the future. That's what the millennial is looking at. And it spans even in the ag industry.
Sure.
Everything is connected to the broadband. We last year created the Broadband Deployment Fund. It'll likely to be funded at $3 to $5 million this year. It's a great start, but that's what it is, a start. $3 to $5 million trying to deploy broadband throughout the state of Colorado is a challenge. And I encourage you to think about other ways of increasing that funding so that we can get the broadband and the internet connections that the state of Colorado needs. We were a leader in the communication industry, and without moving forward on this, we're going to fall backwards.
Couldn't agree more. So we're the broadband legislation, and we understood that $5 million a year isn't going to fix anything, but it was a way to put a stake in the ground that we saw this as a high priority, and that we need to find, I would say at a minimum $10 or $15 million in addition to that every year, and be able to do that for 10 or 15 years. Broadband is no different than what happened when this country funded rural electrification, made sure that telephones were in every part of the country. It's the common currency of commerce. And certainly, my argument to people in Metro Denver or in Colorado Springs, that these investments in the rural parts of the state in broadband make our urban areas stronger and more successful as well. It is truly a unified investment. So we're on that. We're looking at it. Again, the legislature has their own ideas on this, so I might need your help to kind of prod them a little bit.
Governor Rachel Richards, Pickens County Commissioner, and delighted you're here, and thank you for being here, and so congratulations on your re-election.
Thank you.
Yesterday we had a meeting of the CCI Public Land Steering Committee. I'm honored to serve as vice chair of that group. And we were struggling with our budget to how do we continue to chip in enough to fund people to go to NACO to argue on behalf of PILT. And this is just a critical issue for our counties. Whether you have public lands or not, because you probably visit areas that have public lands and enjoy those recreational amenities, but it's become such a political football, whether people are holding off on it to try and use it to pass tough bills and throw it at the end, or just ignore it because they're hoping that by starving the counties, they can push forward this goal of transferring all the public lands back to the states. And we just need you, through the Governors Association and at every level possible, to push for the permanent full funding of PILT. Thank you.
Easy. No. I thought you guys would be a little more loaded for bear. Easily done. Yeah.
Thank you, Governor. Elbert County, Robert Rowland, Elbert County. A lot of our rural schools are really being challenged right now, including our school districts in Elbert County. Isn't it time to get back to meeting the mandate of the people under Amendment 23 and not using the negative factor to reduce the funding to our local schools? We've really got some serious challenges right now, and we need some relief to keep the level of education and for our children in our rural communities in particular at the levels that I think all of us expect to remain competitive and keep that job market healthy and vibrant and moving forward.
Sure. The question always is going to be, I mean, and we're proposing this year, just like we did last year, to add more money to take down the negative factor, right? The negative factor, when we went through the worst recession since the Great Depression, right? That's really what started in 2008. There weren't a lot of choices. I mean, I'm not sure what else you want to start opening the prisons and putting dangerous people back on the streets. But I think, have gone as far as we can in terms of looking at efficiencies in almost every form of government. Not that we're done, but there's going to be a diminishing return. So to be able to continue to the negative factor, we're going to run right up against Tabor next year. And that's going to be the question for everybody is there an appetite to go out and try, say, all right, how do we get some of this money to our local communities? Because obviously the rural counties don't have the same resources as the urban counties do. And I hear it very clearly, although I do think it's interesting, having now visited 50 or 60, well, probably 70 different rural schools, that the students per teacher, and I don't know how it is in Elbert, but in many rural communities, you have better student-teacher ratios than they do in the urban areas, which is, as underfunded as you are, I'm amazed that you could still have such relatively small classes. We were in Jackson County, and I think the student-teacher ratio there for the whole school district was 12 kids per teacher. That's pretty low.
Our ratio is good, but our turnover in our infrastructure, we started to see.
No, I understand that. And the infrastructure, we will definitely, I think there's different sources of money that are going to come up and begin to help with the infrastructure. The best, obviously best is used. How many of you guys have had a school or some school building built in your county in the last 5 years through the BEST program? Yeah, you should, it should be 2/3 of the hands should go up. I believe that's the number that they gave me. And that funding's not going away. You bet. Yeah.
Thank you, Governor, for being here. We were talking about the long-term unemployment rate, and people with different abilities, that differently able, as you mentioned. This this group, whether it's a cognitive disability, a physical disability, or even communication difficulty, is at a severe disadvantage when it comes to applying for a job, you know, sometimes keeping a job. What can counties do? What can the state do to actually help the population? They've got one of the highest unemployment rates, even higher than teenagers. What can be done at the state level or at the county level to try and reduce the unemployment of this group?
So that's a great question, and that's what I want you to take the points I made, ask me the more details of what you can do. Thank you. So every one of you, and it's just politically smart, you have businesses in your community that have the capacity to hire people that maybe have different, they're not as, they've got a slowness in how they speak, or they walk with a limp. Who knows how they're differently able. Certain companies, Walgreens, has a whole program around this, and they are a national leader in being able to take people that have various levels, everything from autism through, go down the list of disabilities, and they find jobs for them where they can succeed. And they are committed to making sure that that individual gets the support they need so that they're not just kind of in a revolving door, because obviously no business wants that. I think you'd be amazed if you reached out to some of the larger companies, and we can provide some support. The National Governors Association put together a whole program about 2 years ago, and we can put together support for anyone who's interested in terms of how do you coach a local business on how they could hire people that are differently abled. It makes sense for that. You talk to Walgreens CEO, and they are convinced that those employees become part of the heart of their company. They're reliable, they're steady. The rest, they become a source of strength for the rest of the workers in the enterprise. So, from my point of view, county commissioners are in an excellent position. Part of your long-term success is building relationships with your businesses in your community. They also can be good donors, I've been told, I don't know. But there's a self-interest in your willingness to go out and build those relationships and encourage them to hire people who are differently able. It's good for their business. Thank you. Good question.
Good morning, John Justin, Mason County Commissioner. Thanks for coming today. Also, like Rachel talked about, we are very interested in getting a long-term funding for that. Also, the oil and gas task force are coming up in meetings in Rifle. We would like to know what the schedule is so we can plan our time to be there when we need to be there. And I think all of Western Colorado, for the most part, would be much more comfortable with the process if we had a few more county commissioners on that task force.
There is not a single constituency I have talked to who is not frustrated that they don't have more representation on that commission. And I mean everyone. It's just so you're in good company. I thought the schedule is supposed to be done before Thanksgiving. If they haven't gotten it out to you, I assume that they're going to get it out to you as quickly as possible. That should, if it hasn't happened, I'll check on that when I get back to Denver and find out what's holding that up. I remain very optimistic about that commission. I think the what I love is when I talk to old friends of mine who are environmentalists, and they're upset about some part of that commission, something that someone said, and I talk about people I've known for years back when I was a geologist that are in the oil and gas industry, and they're upset about something. They're frustrated because they heard something. Usually if you've got both sides a little bit frustrated, that would indicate that you're getting close to some place where lightning might strike. And this is not a problem just in Colorado. This is a problem across America, and one that I think we have a lot of momentum in terms of figuring out a way to solve it, and a lot of self-interest on both sides to really say, all right, how do we allow some more significant local control so that municipal leaders and county commissioners can have a voice in how oil and gas operations are conducted in your jurisdiction, but at the same time respect the private property that someone's mineral lease represents. And that, the day after the election, I was somewhere, a elderly couple came up to me and basically said they thanked me for the commission, but they were still very worried about it. And they had a map. They have property, mineral leases in kind of far eastern Weld County. Exploration is coming towards them now. And there are a bunch of homes that have been built there over the last 15 or 20 years. And some of them are within, 600 feet, or I think some of them were right up close to 500 feet, or I think even a couple were within 300 feet of their leases. And they're saying, we bought these leases 25 years ago, and now because people have built up within 500 feet, somehow we lost value because a developer people chose to live close to where minerals have always been available. I say that not to pick one side or the other, but just to say that there are two sides of this issue, that there are somebody's private property is also balanced by another person's quiet enjoyment of their home, right? They didn't know there were mineral leases. They bought their home. They thought that they could, they liked the landscape. They didn't want to see a pump jack out there. It's a difficult conflict. And the compromise is almost guaranteed not to make everyone happy. But, a compromise that allows us to get, 99% of the value of someone's private property, or 98% of their private property, but at the same time, do whatever's possible to minimize the intrusion into someone's quiet enjoyment of their home. I think that's where the solution's going to be. Who's next? Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioners are so honest.
Paso County.
Yep.
Good to see you again, and thank you very much for allowing us this opportunity to kind of speechify just a little bit and then also ask questions. So I want to thank you, first of all.
That's called foreshadowing.
I just want to thank you for your support of mental health and behavioral health, and the crisis line that's already in place, and our crisis centers, which I think are opening, as we speak. And so that's an incredibly important step for us to have a support system for behavioral health issues. We're still using our jails in our prison system as holding places for mental health. And I think that one of the issues that confronts us, not just with that issue, but others, is the issue of housing, and the fact that there are no places for people who don't have means to live. And there are a number of factors contributing to that. But again, kind of taking a page from my colleague Sam Taylor, how can we work with the state in promoting affordable housing and again, to go along with the training that's needed so that people can have a place to live, food to eat, and a job.
Sure. So mental health, I think most of you understand this pretty clearly, that we still have a lot of work, and it's, again, not just Colorado, across the country, but Colorado is further behind than most. We're a very low tax state. We have had a lot of pressures around education. If you look at, my big thing, and you talk to your local businesses, I think they'll see the potential of this, and I think it has potential for pretty much every county in the state. We've always been the thinnest state. We are not the healthiest state. And you've heard me say this before. We've had a full court press on this. One of the places where we really lag is how we deal with mental health, our suicide rates, our teenage suicide rates. I mean, we are one of the worst states in the country. And start asking around, you'll be amazed at, you don't have to go, it's 1 or 2 degrees of separation to talk to someone who's had a child kill themselves. And there is no harder, I can't even describe, I have 3 friends who have gone through that either with an immediate family member or a sibling's child in the last couple of years. And I've never seen families wrenched apart. And I went to 60 funerals in the first 4 years in our first administration. I'm no stranger to people going through very, very hard circumstances. But having a family suicide is about as hard as it gets, and we are near the bottom. And obviously the resources we've now put towards it are a great first step, but we need to augment that with, again, a systemic response. I think not just the businesses, but go through the schools, businesses, to our local political constituencies, to start saying it's okay to talk about mental health and to talk about depression, and really face up that this is something that a lot of people have dealt with successfully. You can deal with it. Sometimes when you think that nothing's ever going to get better, the next day the sun comes up and you feel a whole lot better. The whole point of these crisis centers, so many people, if you keep them out of that in that moment of crisis, you keep them out of harm's way, you protect them for 24, 48, 72 hours, they get through it. And they go on and have, in many cases, remarkably constructive, productive, happy lives. So it is tied also to housing. This country back in the 70s and 80s, early 90s, we eliminated almost all of our housing for mental illness. Obviously, this pendulum swung way too far. Now we're trying to figure out how do we do this in a way that's cost effective. Reggie Beeka, I think, is a national expert on how do we provide support so that people can live not in institutions but live out in the community and be contributing members of society. So we're on that, but again, this is something we're going to need everybody's help on. It is a major blocking point when you look at how these measurements are taken of different states. What is the healthiest state in America? This is one of the factors that gets measured, and it's something I think just for the good of the state we should really put a focus on, put an effort towards.
And with all due respect, and I know there are other people waiting, but we have data, we have research that shows what kinds of things help, but all those things, whether it's problem-solving courts or places to live with wraparound services, all that takes money and commitment, and so we certainly would need the support from the governor.
Well, I'm just going to have you sit down with the gentleman who was talking about making sure we get rid of the negative for the public school funding, so we get more public school funding, but also, in other words, if I go around this room, every single one of you is going to want more funding for something. What we have to do is figure out, all right, what are the priorities and how do we address each of these issues? Yeah.
Governor, this is David White, Montrose County. Two quick questions. Number one, where are you with the water plan? Number two, what do you plan to do with the listing of the Gunnison sage-grouse as an endangered species?
So the water plan, the draft is going to be out, is it this week or next? I can't even remember. I think it's this week. It's either this week or next, I should know that. We'll then spend a year working on it and making sure that everybody gets their perspective presented and heard. The key to the idea behind the water plan is you don't want a small group of people in Denver making decisions on water that would affect the rest of the state. And we're really going to push that. I think John Stolp has done a remarkable job of getting everybody at the table and making sure everyone gets heard. Now we've just got to keep doing that for a year. And last year I was the chair of the Western Governors Association. The Western governors, every state by the end of next year will either have a water plan finished or be very close to finishing a water plan. And I mean, I think the time is right, especially with climate change and some of the other possible threats that we need to be looking at, long term. You look at Lake Powell right now, it is at a 50-year low. And that's even after we had a very wet year in most of the West last year. We've got some serious things to think about. The Gunnison sage-grouse, I've read twice the ruling. I don't understand it. I told them a year and a half ago, I told them a year ago, I told them 6 months ago, if they listed the Gunnison sage-grouse, after we've actually increased the population in the core where the bird is most popular? No. In greatest density, that bird's losing its popularity on a daily basis. But where we've had the greatest success in Gunnison County, the primary population of the bird is growing and it's healthy. I think the collaborative, permanent, working with the Nature Conservancy, all kinds of innovations we've done there are a national model. We're using a lot of those ideas in different states. All the western states are trying to orchestrate around the greater sage-grouse. But anyway, I told them a year and a half ago, 6 months ago, that if they listed it even as threatened, not in danger, but it's threatened, that we would sue them. And they called up 2 days before and said, well, we've got to, because of the court case, we've got to list it as threatened. I said, well, then we're going to have to, no, you don't really have to sue. Yeah, we told you if all the work we've done doesn't qualify to avoid a listing, then what the heck can anyone do? So we have no choice but to sue. So we talked to the Attorney General's office. We are initiating a suit now. I will say, that the Secretary Jewell, who came out to Craig last year, and we went and looked at some of the innovations for the greater sage grouse that were being done on a couple ranches out there, and then she had a community meeting. She is really on this and is, I think, committed to getting the Gunnison sage grouse delisted as rapidly as possible. Now, that's not an easy task. She knows that. We know that. They did, and in her defense, they postponed the decision to list it 3 different times to the point where finally the court, I can't remember the different litigants, but a couple of the more activist Wild Earth Guardians, in the end wouldn't back away. They were willing a couple times to give extensions, but they weren't this last time. And I think in fairness, the Department of the Interior and Fish and Wildlife did everything they could to try and get one more extension to be able to demonstrate the success that was being done. So we're going to file suit, but we're also not going to call names. We're going to work as hard as we can with the Fish and Wildlife to figure out, all right, what's the path to delisting this as quickly as possible. Last question?
Yeah, we'll take those 2 of them.
These two questions, then we've got to roll on. You've got to roll on, not me. I mean, I'd stay here all day.
My name is Janine McKenzie, and I run the Colorado Health and Marriage Project through the Center for Relationship Education. And recently we did a workshop in inner city Denver where the person who brought us in did not want us to talk about marriage with the kids because it might make them feel bad because they didn't come from a healthy marriage. And so we didn't. But here's the question I have for you. When we talk to the kids, out of 67 inner city, middle school, high school kids, who a lot of them were already in trouble and a lot of them were already minority kids, what they told us was that not one of them had ever seen a healthy family, healthy marriage in their community, and they had never been to a wedding, and they didn't know really how to do relationships well. So I love living in a local control state, and I also want this state to be the most healthy state for children, as we all do. So the question I have for you is 3 out of the 4 TANF criteria have to do with family formation, marriage, reducing non-marital childbearing, because that's one of the contributing factors of poverty. But my question is, what are we doing as a state to really talk about family formation, healthy relationship development, safe and stable families, because it's important to child well-being?
Well, you realize you're talking to someone separated from their wife.
That's not the point.
I know. Well, I got it. I'm using that as a moment of full disclosure. I will say, and I will, my wife lives 1.5 blocks away. Our son runs back and forth. Our son's 12 now, and my wife has a significant other now that she's, I think, hopefully will be in a more stable relationship. And yet she came out and campaigned the last 4 weeks of the campaign. She made phone calls to raise money. She was out doing social media. She did everything she could. We're still a family. We're just, I guess, a different kind of family. And I am very attached and admire the person she's seeing. In low-income families, we don't have that. I get it. And I hear kids from low-income communities that see what a family's supposed to look like on TV. And I've had any number of times kids come up and say, I don't know that. I've never envisioned that. I don't have the answer to it, right? I do think it's important that we stress and keep bringing it up through schools and through all of the different institutions that touch our kids, that this is something to be, you don't want to have children before you're ready. You want to have a family. Look at, so often it is, and we got into a lot of trouble with our family planning initiative over the last 4 years. I think most of you guys know this, but we went out through the 29 clinics in Colorado, and we provided long-term reversible contraception upon request to low-income young women aged 15 to 25 This is basically IUDs and Norplants, somewhat, among some people, controversial. We started every one of those conversations with abstinence, right? That was a basic part, saying, listen, if you're 16 years old, you shouldn't be having sex. And no, nothing is foolproof. We pushed that as hard as we could, but we also backed it up with, if they wanted it, we provided contraception. And we reduced, over those 4 years, we reduced teenage pregnancy in Colorado by over 40%. That's the largest, I think, any state's ever done in history. I mean, that's part of the solution, is making sure that the kids can plan, and when they have a family, they're planning it. The number of kids, if a girl hasn't turned 18 and she has a child, her chances of graduating from high school go down to about 33 or 34%. So, I mean, that's some of the beginning stuff, but we obviously, I couldn't agree.
I want to give a plug to the Center for Marital and Family Studies at DU. They're right here in our backyard. They've got all the research about what makes relationships work and what makes relationships fail, and we all need to do that, all of us, adults as well as kids.
Yeah, they are.
To make this state the healthiest for children.
Totally agree. I'll put it out. Last question.
Good morning, Governor. Nancy Sharp, Arapahoe County. And first of all, I have to say that I totally agree with my colleague, Steve Johnson, on TIF, and look forward to working with you to find a solution so we're not, when I was a mayor, not battling that time after time. I think we're all worn down by that. So
You're the one person in the room who probably could really fashion a good compromise.
we're working on it. We're working on it this month. So we hope we have something, Metro mayors and Metro area county commissioners. But my request today is not for more money, but I co-chair the Works Allocation Committee, and we had a really good, robust conversation, and I was thinking about it when you were making your comments on jobs and helping people to find jobs. People on public assistance is an area that we talked quite a bit about yesterday, and how we can help to get those people off public assistance. It's good for them, it's good for our economy, it's good for taxpayers, mostly for those individuals finding a job. But it is an area that sometimes our workforce development centers, they tend to maybe not work as much with that group of people. But one of the things that came up yesterday was, how do we as a state use the federal dollars that come to the whole state to pull together to work to get those individuals back to work, and not make sure that we're not siloing money in certain areas,
right,
but how we bring all those funds together. Not that we have to ask for more, but the value of bringing all those dollars together to more effectively work with those individuals who can work, but they may need that GED, they may need that skills training.
Sure.
They're not engineers necessarily.
Well, they may have a felony. I mean, there's all kinds. I mean, I'm serious. So we now are collecting businesses that will hire felons. A couple of our larger home builders, and again, there's a vetting process they go through. They now have a whole list of questions, and they feel, a couple of these are large companies, they feel very comfortable that within the jobs they're hiring the people for, and the filter that they put the application through, they feel very safe that they can hire people that have, a lot of them are drug convictions of one sort or another, or drug dealing, that they can get good employees out of that. I think what we did when I was a mayor, the U.S. Conference of Mayors worked very hard to create what eventually became called as the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness. And basically every dollar that was funneled from Veterans Administration, from HUD, from the Department of Labor, all these different things that affected homelessness, all went through, for the first time, one person. I think this was in 2004. The governors were talking about doing the exact same thing in terms of workforce development. And how do we look at, who do we want to get back to work the quickest in terms of what saves all of us more money, right? And who are the people that we get the greatest benefit if we can get them working? And it's not just the people on public assistance. There's a whole cross-section there. I'm sure you're probably know more about it than I do. Anyway, so the governors are trying to work on that to get the federal government to set up a single place where we can know that all this, whether it's Department of Education, Department of Labor, HUD, all of them have different funding for these things. Department of Health and Human Services have one place where this workforce money can come in and we can make sure that we're getting the maximum benefit. Great point.
Thank you very much, and we really appreciate with Reggie, but it isn't something that just human services can do by itself. It's not just
Right.
that one
No, it's everything.
department, it brings everything.
Well, Reggie is working, I mean, within our administration, he sits down with Ellen Gollenbeck, who runs our Department of Labor and Employment. I mean, we have that silo busting mentality. Is that fair to say, Reggie? But anyway, so we're trying to do it on a local level, but federal level will have more to it. Thank you again all for your attention and for all your hard work.